So I think it's about time I talk about one of TV's newest horror drama crossover series. It's a beloved adaptation with a completely unnecessary remake and even a stage adaptation.
Our survivors.
This is our chance to do something.
It is over, Tess!
That's right, I'm talking about Let the Right One In. Oh, you thought I was talking about The Last of Us? Yeah, I mean, I have my thoughts on that show too, but I want to wait till the hype dies down a bit. That way I can look at the show more critically without just rushing my thoughts to ride the views train. And besides, this will be a good palate cleanser from all the multiple Last of Us videos that are all hitting your sub boxes after each new episode anyways. So let's go into the much less popular show, Showtime's Let the Right One In. So before I get into things, I just want to give a little background on what this show is, where it comes from, and why I even care. Let the Right One In originally, and I'm sorry for this in advance, Let the Rätta Komma In is an international best-selling Swedish novel written by John Advis Lindqvist that came out in 2004. It was turned into a Swedish film 4 years later in 2008, with Lindqvist also writing the screenplay. The film received praise from both critics and audiences alike, so much so that it was already greenlit for an American remake before ever exiting the festival circuit. The English remake, released in 2010, was directed by Matt Reeves and had a slight name change to simply Let Me In. Let Me In. I personally have never seen the remake, as the original was just so good there's really no need, and the channel Twin Perfect has a great video on why it should have never been made in the first place. But hey, maybe after I'm done with these videos, at the end, I'll do Let Me In. Anyways, in 2013, it was also adapted to the stage by playwright Jack Thorne, and finally in 2022 was brought to the silver screen. And as of recording, was officially canceled last week. Now, I'm not too bummed about this, as the first episode hasn't exactly inspired confidence for the rest of the series, but there also seems to have been some mishandlings with the rights between the author and Showtime. And in no way am I encouraging piracy. But
do what you want, cause a pirate is free. You are a pirate.
Considering there's currently no way to watch this show legally anyways, if you really want to see it, there are ways. And finally, last thing, I first saw the original Swedish film when I was around 12, and it really connected with me on a deeper level. I even read the novel for the first time last year in anticipation for the show. So it does kind of suck that hardly anyone knows about this story despite all of its different forms over the years. But with that being said, I will try to judge the series on its own merits. But if it strays too far from what Let the Right One In is in terms of themes, characters, or major plot points, I'm gonna call it out. Alright, that's enough background.
So let's just jump into it.
This episode begins with a cold open on this dad telling his son,
"You're about to miss your first sunrise in years."
And well, if you didn't already know, this is a vampire story, and it doesn't go well.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
It's kind of a different approach as the original, as that never goes out of its way to show so blatantly that it's a vampire story, at least in the beginning. And I think I prefer that subtlety, but I understand why they chose to do it this way, and I don't outright hate it. So anyways, we move on to Mark. He's a middle-aged man, normal-looking guy, good with kids, and also has a chest that taps to him in Morse code. And conveniently is moving right next door to our other main protagonist, Isaiah, and his mom, Naomi.
Oh, you need some help?
I'm good, thanks. This is weird right here.
Oh, so somebody's finally moving in next door. Okay, I'm ready. This is my son, Isaiah. I am Naomi. Isaiah, this is our new neighbor.
Mark.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Mark.
Isaiah is a 12-year-old boy that's into magic, but unfortunately gets bullied pretty heavily. Being into magic and all, he just wants to look the part by wearing a suit jacket to school, which leads to Naomi being kind of a sucky mom.
But I want to wear this.
We have talked about in this house, you can wear whatever you want, but out in the world...
But why is it my fault if people act...
Just don't make yourself such an easy target. I'm sorry. I didn't mean.
It's fine.
Yeah, not the best. The other important thing we learn here is that there's been a string of homicides in Manhattan from the news as they head out for the day. On their way out, we meet Isaiah's dad, who has a rocky relationship with Naomi due to him being an alcoholic and dropping in and out of Isaiah's life. He does seem to be on the right path though, as he's been going to AA meetings, been sober for 3 months, and does eventually convince Naomi to let him come over to dinner to prove it. Meanwhile, Mark is in his apartment taping up the windows when we finally get to see who's inside the chest. And while it opens, we hear this growl that just doesn't do it for me. I don't know, I just think it's kind of lame. I guess the growl doesn't fit with who's in the chest, and that's what's throwing me off. But what does work for me is after this, Mark goes to get, food? And out of nowhere, a girl snatches the jug and just starts chugging. And the sound as she drinks just makes me so uncomfortable, but like in a good way. The sound guys knew what they were doing here. But this is where I start to have some problems. So it's revealed that Mark is Eleanor or Ellie's father, which is a pretty big change. Ellie's familiar in every other version is not her father, which matters as it changes the power dynamic between the two and retcons her whole backstory. Although I do think this scene is well acted, shot, and overall makes me buy into this father-daughter relationship. When Mark tells Ellie about the spare bathroom without windows, she seems excited that she'll finally have a room of her own, and this feels heartfelt, and it's done well. I'm a bit worried about these changes, but I am interested to see what the show does with it, so I'll just let it slide. But once again, instead of being subtle and letting the audience infer things later on, like Ellie not always fitting in or that she likes puzzles, it's just told to us instead. Like, I don't need things spelled out to me, but whatevers. The scene ends with Mark leaving to go find a job. She asks how old Isaiah is, and just before he leaves, Mark offers to take Ellie to some science exhibit when he gets back. We then get back to Naomi, who is of course the lead detective on these homicide cases, and after some police work where she bribes a homeless witness, was told that there was a small man running from the scene of the crime covered in blood with glowing eyes. Naomi and her partner aren't really buying it, but we also find out that Isaiah's dad used to deal drugs. Oh yeah, and remember the old guy from the beginning? Well, he's relevant again, cause he calls up his daughter Claire to tell her that he's dying, but she kinda hates the old man, and it isn't until he says it's about Peter, who I assume is the boy from the beginning, and her brother, that she actually agrees to go see him. We also get to see some of the bullying that Isaiah goes through, but honestly, this feels like what a boomer imagines when they think of bullying. Like, Isaiah is called a freak when he tries to sit with the cool kids, so he leaves to sit at a table with this girl in a literal trench coat and just way too much eyeshadow. He tries to talk to her and show her a magic trick, but she just up and leaves, and then Isaiah gets a text saying he should just unalive himself. Like, this is what I mean. The girl's just so over the top, and the text comes from unknown. Like, did Isaiah save that number as unknown, or what? Because if you get a text, even from an unknown number, their phone number would still come up. It just feels like a boomer's imagination of what being bullied today is like. Meanwhile, we catch up with Mark, who actually does find a job at a restaurant because he knows the owner, who's actually Ellie's godfather. This is fine, I'm okay with it. The thing that really does concern me though, is they start talking about Ellie and her vampirism as like a medical condition and that there might be a cure, which makes absolutely no sense, because if it is a medical condition, it ruins the lore of needing to be explicitly let in, which is, you know, the title of the show. Unfortunately, it does seem like that's where this is heading, just from the opening scene to Claire being some kind of doctor and now this conversation. I just hope it's a fake out and not actually a medical condition. But by now, the day is coming to an end, so Ellie can finally go outside, where we get to see the first interactions between her and Isaiah. They do the whole thing where she's not wearing a jacket or shoes, and she obviously doesn't fit in. But for some reason, Isaiah feels like too much of a child here, like almost too young and naive. Like, I get that there's supposed to be some disparity between the two, even though they're both 12, because Ellie's been 12 for a lot longer, but something just feels off. Anyway, Ellie's stomach audibly growls and Isaiah offers her chocolate, which she obviously can't eat, and then she says that he can eat it for her, which is weird, and I'm actually glad that Isaiah calls it out. It's kind of funny, but Isaiah ends up eating the chocolate, and the scene ends with Mark coming to pick up Ellie to go to that science exhibit. Before coming home, Naomi goes to the magic shop to get Isaiah a present to kind of make up for the morning, and she ends up getting him this gift where it pokes a needle through his arm and fake bleeds. But before we get to see what happens at dinner, we jump back to Ellie and Mark at the science exhibit. They're conveniently the only ones there, which is a little dumb, but I really enjoy this scene. Their father-daughter relationship feels real, and I'm kinda liking it. Ellie's still hungry though, which concerns Mark, but Ellie tells him it's no big deal and not to ruin their night. We get to see some of Ellie's vampire abilities when Mark tells her the coast is clear and she climbs the building and leaps to another. And once again, I really like this scene. The music swells as the camera spins around Ellie and she just has this look of pure astonishment on her face. It's just beautiful. Unfortunately, this is where things start to get stupid again. So Mark sees a strange man walking barefoot right over some broken glass with glowing eyes. This prompts Mark to just abandon Ellie, chasing him into the subway down a dark corridor, which, if you think this person is another vampire, why would you go chasing after them alone? He would just be an obvious threat. It's just kind of silly, and Mark does almost get taken out here until Ellie does save him. They are able to incapacitate the guy though using Mark's gas mask, and Mark begins to look for things like fangs or bite marks, but it doesn't appear that the man has any of these signs though, so they just decide that Ellie should drink his blood, but upon doing so, she recoils saying he's on something, nothing she's ever tasted before, and Mark takes the guy's phone, which gets a text giving him a time and a place. This of course connects back to Isaiah's dad, who also gets the same text at dinner, and despite him having a good time, he ditches them to meet at the rendezvous point. Meanwhile, Ellie and Mark get into an argument where Ellie calls out Mark for being dumb by going after that guy in the first place, which good on her because Mark was being kind of an idiot. Ellie believes that she disgusts Mark because of her, I guess, condition, but Mark denies that and tells her to go home and he'll bring her dinner. This scene really lets Madison Taylor Baez shine, and although this version of Ellie is a far cry from the original, I think she's a good actress most of the time. We then cut back to Claire and the old man, where we find out some backstory that she basically raised her younger brother Peter after her father's divorce without him. When he came back, he took Peter on a hunting trip where Peter got attacked by a bear, and that's why Claire resents him so much. But of course it's revealed that Peter was never actually attacked by a bear and that the old man has been working on a cure for Peter, and he's close, but he's dying and needs Claire to finish his work. We get one last scene with Isaiah and his mom where she gives him his present and lets him go outside to show it to the other kids. Ellie's in her apartment alone, just going wild as she's hungry, and after everyone leaves Isaiah, she sees him all alone outside and decides to go eat. She nearly takes a bite until she sees Isaiah's magic trick and decides to let him go. They also finally introduce themselves as they start getting closer. And remember when I said something felt off when these two were on screen together before? I think it just comes down to Madison being a better actor than Ian Foreman. I don't want to hate on him too much, so for now, I'll just chalk it up to the director because he just delivered these lines kind of awkwardly, which is maybe what they're going for, but I don't know, just a little too much for me. Meanwhile, Mark meets Isaiah's dad at the rendezvous point where he abducts him, and while interrogating him, Mark gets some crucial intel on the drug that guy he chased down was on.
What do you know about this drug?
Not much. The people who buy it say that it's a primal high. It makes them feel like they can run through walls, except...
Except what?
Apparently the hangover is brutal. It makes them feel like... When they go out in the sun, it makes them feel like their skin is on fire.
What else?
That's all I know.
And with the first big twist of the series, Mark keeps his promise to bring home dinner to Ellie and takes out Isaiah's dad. This is just brutal and took me completely by surprise and is very different from any other version of this story. So I'm really intrigued to see how this all plays out. And like I said, Mark does not break his promise, so we get treated to another scene of Ellie drinking that blood and just the disturbing sound of her slurping it all down. The episode ends with Claire finally getting to see what's left of Peter after the burns from the beginning of the episode. It doesn't look good, but somehow he's still alive and teases that he may have been bitten by Ellie as we see a group photo with them together. And finally, we see Mark tucking Ellie into her bathtub bed and see photos of them before all of this happening, foreshadowing their backstory. Honestly, I'm not impressed, but I'm not disappointed either. It's nowhere near the original film's quality in terms of style or tone, and I really think it messes with some of the characters in ways I don't necessarily like. But for a show that's changing a lot to be more palatable to an American audience, and something that I do want to like because I want more people to know about the story, I think it's okay so far. A mid to light 6. Anyways, that's all I got for you today, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and please like and subscribe. These videos take a long time to write and edit. And let me know if you want me to continue the series. Also, what's your experience with Let the Right One In? Did you even know the series existed? Let me know down below. Alright, peace.